Earth had long been regarded as a backwater in the grand tapestry of galactic warfare. Its soldiers, though well-trained and technologically advanced, were often dismissed by the fighters of the galactic arena as mere amateurs. The arena, a vast and brutal intergalactic competition, had become the ultimate proving ground where the universe's deadliest warriors faced off. These competitors were from all corners of the galaxy, each possessing unique powers, skills, and abilities honed through centuries of conflict. Among them, Earth soldiers were an anomaly. While they had some of the best technology the galaxy had seen, they lacked the raw, innate powers that many of the alien fighters wielded. Human soldiers had earned a reputation for resilience, strategy, and unparalleled teamwork. In every conflict, they adapted quickly, finding new ways to win with sheer cunning when brute force failed them. Yet despite their achievements, Earth's military was often underestimated. Their weapons were advanced, but not as devastating as the energy blades of the Clithian warriors or the mind-bending abilities of the Zorathians. They fought with determination, but that alone couldn't compare to the natural advantages some of the alien species possessed. Many of these warriors saw Earth's fighters as no match for the galactic elite. The humans' technological prowess, however, was undeniable. Their space-age weaponry, from plasma rifles to high-powered energy shields, had transformed Earth's military into a force capable of standing up to galactic threats. Yet, there was always a lingering belief in the arena that Earth soldiers had reached the pinnacle of what they could achieve. The alien races, with their varied forms of combat, had evolved differently. Some wielded psychic powers, others had the ability to regenerate from wounds that would have killed a human instantly, and a few could even alter the very fabric of reality itself. Human fighters, in contrast, relied on strategy, adaptability, and their superior firepower. Earth's military had faced countless adversaries, but the alien races viewed them with a kind of casual amusement, dismissing them as outclassed in raw power. The arena itself was a brutal testing ground where different species competed for fame, wealth, and prestige. The warriors who emerged victorious often saw their names etched into the annals of history, and the crowds cheered for those who could push the boundaries of combat. For Earth soldiers, their participation was more about proving that they could survive, not necessarily about winning. But the relentless challenge of the arena had begun to take its toll. Every battle they fought, every opponent they faced, tested the limits of their endurance and skill. The narrative around Earth soldiers in the arena had been one of underdogs. Despite their human vulnerabilities, they always found a way to win. They had beaten technologically superior opponents by outsmarting them, outlasting them, and sometimes exploiting the arrogance of their adversaries. Yet, despite these occasional victories, there was a sense that the human soldiers were always on the edge, one mistake away from defeat. The aliens they fought were powerful, and though Earth's warriors were no strangers to danger, they were always walking a fine line between survival and annihilation. For years, Earth soldiers fought hard and earned grudging respect from the other races, but they never quite attained the level of awe that other fighters received. It wasn't until a new kind of challenge entered the arena, one that would test their very limits, that the dynamics would shift. The galactic arena wasn't just a place for physical strength. It was a place where the psychology of combat mattered just as much as raw power. In many ways, the human mind had an advantage. Earth soldiers were trained to think under pressure, to anticipate moves, and to use tactics to their advantage. They could adapt to almost any scenario, often turning the tide of battle in ways their alien opponents couldn't anticipate. But there was always a risk. One slip-up, one missed opportunity, and they would be overrun by an opponent with superior strength or abilities. But all of that changed with the arrival of a new contender, a being that wasn't like anything the arena had ever seen. This was not just another fighter with enhanced senses or incredible power. This was something far more dangerous. No one knew where it came from, and no one could have predicted how it would change the course of the galactic arena forever. For the first time, Earth soldiers were going to face an adversary that would make them question everything they knew about war, strategy, and survival. The galactic arena had seen many warriors come and go, but nothing like this. The soldiers of Earth had faced many challenges before, but this was something entirely new. In the galactic arena, fighters from across the universe brought their unique abilities, tactics, and strengths. The diversity of warriors was staggering, creatures of unimaginable forms and capabilities that had evolved in environments radically different from Earth's. Each of them had honed their combat skills over countless generations, and each believed that their species was the pinnacle of evolutionary success. They came from worlds where physical and mental enhancements were the norm, and the arena served as the ultimate stage to prove their superiority. These were not just fighters. They were living legends, undefeated champions in their home systems, and their names carried the weight of millennia of tradition and power. Among the most fearsome competitors were the Clithians, a race of enormous, armored beings with thick, nearly impenetrable exoskeletons. Their strength was unparalleled, and their ability to crush opponents with sheer force made them a staple in the arena. Their combat style was brutal and direct, relying on raw power and speed. They didn't need finesse, just the overwhelming weight of their blows was enough to bring any adversary to their knees. To face a Clithian in battle was to face the unrelenting might of a war machine that would crush anything in its path. Their relentless charge was a force of nature, and it left no room for subtlety or hesitation. Earth soldiers, with their focus on precision and tactics, often found themselves outmatched by this overwhelming physical strength. Then there were the Zorathians, a race of highly intelligent, telepathic beings who could manipulate the minds of their opponents. Zorathians didn't need to rely on brute strength. They used mental manipulation to control the battlefield. With the ability to sense and influence thoughts, they could anticipate their opponent's every move. They were patient and strategic, drawing out their battles until their enemies made a mistake. Earth soldiers, with their reliance on technology and instinct, were often thrown off balance by the mental assault of the Zorathians. A Zorathian didn't need to land a punch to win. They simply wore their opponents down psychologically, exploiting weaknesses before delivering a final, crushing blow. Their powers of mind control and manipulation made them terrifying adversaries, and they were often considered unbeatable in one-on-one combat. The insected species known as the Tsari were another fearsome presence in the arena. Their ability to adapt to any environment gave them an advantage in combat. With their chitinous armor and enhanced senses, they could track an opponent with surgical precision. Their multiple limbs and prehensile appendages allowed them to fight in ways that human opponents could not even comprehend. They were as efficient in close combat as they were at ranged attacks, using a combination of speed and precision that overwhelmed their enemies. Earth soldiers had faced insectoid opponents before, but the Tsari were unlike anything they had experienced. Their alien physiology, coupled with their ruthless, hive-mind tactics, meant that even the most well-prepared human fighter could be outmaneuvered and overwhelmed in seconds. Beyond the physical and mental prowess of these warriors, there was the sheer unpredictability of the arena itself. Some species had developed unique abilities that defied understanding. The Erythrians, for example, could manipulate the elements of fire and ice, creating storms of devastating energy that could scorch the earth or freeze an opponent in place. The sheer destructive potential of their powers made them a terrifying presence, capable of turning the tide of any battle in seconds. The Earth soldiers, with their advanced weaponry, were able to hold their ground, but the unpredictability of elemental forces could easily shift the balance in the arena, and even the best prepared humans struggled to predict how an Erythrian would strike. Then there were the Shona, a race of highly agile and stealthy assassins who specialized in stealth and subterfuge. Their ability to move undetected through any environment made them nearly impossible to counter. They relied on speed, evasion, and surprise, often striking before their opponent even realized they were under attack. These assassins were trained in a form of combat that focused on precision rather than power, striking vital points with deadly accuracy. Earth soldiers, who relied on coordinated strategies and firepower, found it difficult to counter the Shona's guerrilla tactics. A single misstep could result in a fatal blow, and the Shona knew how to exploit the smallest opening in their opponent's defense. Despite the overwhelming abilities of these warriors, Earth soldiers managed to make a name for themselves in the arena. Their most significant advantage was their adaptability. Earth's military personnel weren't as physically enhanced as the alien species they faced, but they made up for it with their intelligence, resourcefulness, and teamwork. The Earth's soldiers didn't just rely on their strength or their advanced technology. They fought with a sense of purpose that transcended the typical bloodlust of the arena. They learned from every fight, incorporating new techniques, strategies, and technologies into their repertoire. Their greatest strength was the ability to think on their feet and adjust their tactics in real time, often turning the tide of battle with a well-timed maneuver or a strategic weapon deployment. This adaptability made them formidable opponents in their own right, earning them a grudging respect from their alien adversaries. However, this respect was often tempered by the belief that Earth soldiers would never be able to truly dominate in the arena. While they were skilled and resourceful, the alien fighters had natural advantages, whether it was sheer physical power, telepathic abilities, or an affinity for the environment, that gave them an edge in most situations. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth soldiers were always the underdogs, impressive in their persistence, but ultimately limited in their potential. Even as they won battles and gained recognition, there was an unspoken belief that they could never truly compete with the elite warriors of the arena, who had powers that Earth's technology could not match. This perception was one that the soldiers of Earth were used to, but it also drove them to constantly improve, to prove that their will to survive was more than enough to overcome the most overwhelming odds. And yet, no one could have predicted that everything would change when the true test of their abilities arrived. The arrival of the Juggernaut in the galactic arena sent shockwaves throughout the intergalactic community. It was unlike any fighter the universe had ever seen, a being so powerful, so destructive, that even the most seasoned warriors found themselves questioning their place in the arena. The Juggernaut's origins were shrouded in mystery, with few able to even grasp the true nature of its abilities. Rumors spread like wildfire, with some claiming it was an ancient warrior from a long-forgotten galaxy, while others believed it was a living weapon created by an advanced civilization seeking to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Regardless of its origin, one thing was certain: the Juggernaut was a force to be reckoned with. Unlike other competitors, the Juggernaut did not fit into the familiar categories of alien warriors. It did not rely on psychic abilities, physical enhancements, or elemental powers. Its strength was unlike anything the arena had ever witnessed: brutal, unyielding, and unrelenting. The very air around it seemed to tremble with the weight of its presence. When it stepped onto the field, the ground shook, and the crowd fell silent in awe and fear. It was a living embodiment of destruction, an unstoppable force that seemed to exist solely to break everything in its path. Fighters who had faced the most lethal species in the universe suddenly found themselves paralyzed by the overwhelming power of the Juggernaut. The most striking feature of the Juggernaut was its size. Towering over most competitors, its massive frame seemed to defy the laws of physics. Muscles rippled beneath its armor-like skin, each movement a testament to its raw, physical power. It did not need weapons. Its fists were weapons in themselves, capable of crushing through the toughest defenses with ease. Its very presence in the arena shifted the rules of combat, forcing other fighters to reconsider everything they thought they knew about fighting. The Juggernaut was not merely an opponent, it was an existential threat. It didn't fight with grace or strategy. It fought with sheer brutality, overwhelming opponents with relentless force. The reputation of the Juggernaut quickly spread throughout the arena, and whispers of its invincibility became the talk of the galaxy. Its battles were short, violent affairs, marked by a display of unrestrained power that left its opponents broken and defeated in a matter of moments. Unlike the calculated strikes of the Zorathians or the precision of the Tsari, the Juggernaut was all about force, pounding, crushing, and annihilating everything in its path. It had no need for finesse or strategy. It was simply too powerful to be stopped by conventional means. The arena, once a place of calculated tactics and deadly skill, was now a place of survival against a being that seemed invulnerable. The first encounter with Earth soldiers was nothing short of catastrophic. They had faced countless formidable opponents before, but the Juggernaut was different. It wasn't just stronger, it was something else entirely. Earth soldiers tried to use their superior technology, relying on weapons and tactics they had honed over years of combat. They unleashed everything they had: plasma guns, energy shields, and explosives, but the Juggernaut seemed unaffected. Its skin was impervious to the weapons that had once brought down even the most fearsome of alien warriors. Every shot, every blow, seemed to bounce off, leaving the Juggernaut unharmed and unfazed. Its movements were slow but deliberate, as if it didn't even need to hurry to crush its opponents. Earth's soldiers quickly realized that they were facing something entirely outside their realm of experience. Despite their training, the soldiers found themselves unable to adapt to the Juggernaut's raw power. There was no tactic they could use that would outsmart it. There was no weakness to exploit. Every plan they devised was rendered moot in the face of its unstoppable force. The Juggernaut seemed to know no fear, no hesitation, and no mercy. It was a living tank, invincible and relentless. The soldiers, who had been able to outlast and outthink so many of their previous adversaries, were suddenly confronted with an enemy that required not just skill, but something else entirely. They weren't fighting for victory anymore, they were fighting for survival. As the Juggernaut tore through Earth's military ranks, the soldiers began to recognize that they were facing not just a physical opponent, but a psychological one. The sheer weight of its power was demoralizing. To fight against something that could not be stopped, that would not be defeated, was to face an existential crisis. It wasn't just the physical toll of the battle that weighed on them. It was the realization that, despite all their technological advancements, despite all their years of training, they were powerless against the Juggernaut. This was the first time Earth soldiers had encountered an adversary that did not bend to human ingenuity or force. For many of the soldiers, it became clear that traditional warfare had no place in the battle against the Juggernaut. There was no strategy that could turn the tide, no weapon that could pierce its defense. Even the most advanced technology Earth had to offer seemed like little more than a nuisance to the Juggernaut. The humans were forced to reconsider everything they knew about combat. The rules had changed, and it wasn't just their physical prowess that was being tested. It was their will to fight, their resolve to endure. The Juggernaut's presence in the arena was a reminder that, sometimes, there are forces beyond human control. Forces that could not be beaten by sheer willpower or cleverness. The fighters from other races, watching from the sidelines, were equally stunned by the Juggernaut's display of power. Even they, the so-called elite of the galaxy, found themselves questioning their place in the arena. The Juggernaut was not a being that could be outsmarted, outlasted, or overwhelmed. It was a force of nature, a living embodiment of destruction that would not stop until everything in its path was reduced to nothing. The arena, once a place where tactics and skill reigned supreme, had been forever altered. No longer could the other fighters rely on their usual tricks and strategies to win. The Juggernaut was a challenge unlike any other, one that threatened to upend the entire power structure of the arena. For Earth soldiers, the battle with the Juggernaut would mark the beginning of a new chapter. They would have to dig deeper than ever before to find a way to survive. This wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about understanding the true nature of their enemy. The Juggernaut had shown them the limits of their power, but it had also forced them to reconsider the very nature of warfare. There was no longer any question of whether they could defeat it with conventional means. The question now was whether they could adapt, evolve, and find a way to face the Juggernaut on their terms. The outcome of this battle would reshape everything: the arena, the galaxy, and Earth's place in it. The challenge of facing the Juggernaut was not just physical. It was about adapting in real time, finding weaknesses in something that seemed invulnerable. Earth's soldiers had always relied on technology, tactics, and coordination, and for a moment, they feared that none of that would be enough. But survival in the galactic arena demanded more than brute force. It required the ability to learn, to evolve, and to adapt. The first realization that they could not simply overpower the Juggernaut forced Earth's military to think differently. They had to find ways to exploit its nature, its patterns, and above all, its limitations. The key was to stop thinking of the Juggernaut as an indomitable force, and start seeing it as a puzzle to be solved. The soldiers had faced overwhelming odds before, but this was different. They had no time to waste. They needed to change their approach, or they wouldn't survive long enough to learn from their failures. One of the first things they noticed was the Juggernaut's sheer predictability. Though it moved with terrifying strength and speed, its tactics were simple: charge, destroy, and move on. It was a brute, not a tactician, and that opened the door for Earth soldiers to exploit its lack of subtlety. The soldiers had long relied on adaptability and outthinking their opponents in the heat of battle. The Juggernaut's mindless aggression, its one-track assault, was its weakness. Earth's military immediately adjusted its approach. They didn't try to overpower it head-on. Instead, they began to use its predictability against it. They lured it into traps, using their superior mobility and intelligence to outmaneuver it. The Juggernaut's inability to adapt quickly to tactical shifts gave the humans a crucial edge. This wasn't about overpowering the Juggernaut, it was about making it fight on their terms. The next step was to understand its physiology. While the Juggernaut's exterior was nearly impervious to energy weapons, there were subtle vulnerabilities in its structure that Earth scientists quickly began to analyze. They studied the battle damage it had sustained in previous fights and realized that, though its outer shell was almost unbreakable, there were areas of its body that weren't fully armored. The joints, where its massive limbs met its torso, were slightly less protected. Its underbelly, though still resistant, had minor weak points. Earth soldiers didn't have the firepower to break through its armor directly, but they didn't need to. By focusing on these weak points and developing precision weapons designed to strike them, they could exploit its vulnerabilities without engaging it head-on. The Juggernaut's immense size, its strength, and its invulnerability were only assets if it could continue to move freely and relentlessly. The humans realized that by restricting its movement, they could neutralize its advantages. One of the most innovative strategies involved using the terrain itself. The Juggernaut was powerful, but it was not agile. It had difficulty navigating tight spaces or uneven ground. Earth soldiers began to lure it into environments where its size would become a disadvantage, using obstacles and traps to slow its movements and reduce its ability to charge without being slowed or halted. The soldiers employed guerrilla tactics, ambushing it from multiple angles, then retreating before it could retaliate effectively. The idea wasn't to destroy it in one battle but to wear it down. The Juggernaut was formidable, but its sheer size and brute strength became a liability when it had to fight in environments that restricted its movement. Earth soldiers used their speed and mobility to tire it out, attacking with precision and then falling back, making the Juggernaut chase after them, all the while avoiding direct confrontation. Another crucial adaptation was the soldiers' ability to work together in a way that no other race in the arena had done before. The alien competitors might have been stronger or faster, but the humans relied on teamwork and coordination that allowed them to tackle even the most overwhelming threats. They formed tight units that coordinated strikes from different angles, attacking the Juggernaut from all sides and using its inability to track multiple threats at once to their advantage. They developed new technology, such as energy harpoons and tethering devices, designed to slow down the Juggernaut's movements. These tools wouldn't kill it, but they would restrict its mobility enough to give Earth soldiers the upper hand in their skirmishes. The soldiers also tapped into their greatest strength, ingenuity. Earth's military had always been able to make do with limited resources and find creative solutions to complex problems. They didn't have the natural powers that many of their alien adversaries did, but they had something better: the ability to innovate under pressure. They modified their weapons on the fly, creating new devices designed to target the Juggernaut's specific weaknesses. Energy shields that could withstand its attacks were reinforced with new alloys, and their plasma weapons were recalibrated for maximum precision rather than raw damage. Earth soldiers understood that their power didn't lie in overwhelming the Juggernaut with strength. It lay in their ability to adapt, improvise, and exploit every opening, no matter how small. As the battle progressed, it became clear that Earth soldiers were not just surviving, they were learning, evolving, and adapting faster than the Juggernaut could anticipate. The alien races watching from the sidelines began to realize that the Juggernaut was not the invincible force they had assumed it to be. What had started as a one-sided massacre was beginning to shift in favor of Earth's military. The Juggernaut was still powerful, still terrifying, but it was no longer an unstoppable force. The soldiers had found ways to outsmart it, to weaken it, and to exploit its weaknesses. The war of attrition was taking its toll, and the Juggernaut, though still a formidable presence, was starting to show signs of vulnerability. This was the turning point. Earth's soldiers had taken the fight to the Juggernaut, and while victory was still far from certain, they had shown the galaxy that they could stand toe-to-toe with even the most indomitable of opponents. The other fighters in the arena, who had once looked down on Earth's military, now saw them in a new light. The Juggernaut had been the ultimate test, and though it was not yet defeated, Earth's soldiers had proven that their greatest weapon was not their technology or firepower. It was their adaptability, their will to survive, and their ability to evolve in the face of overwhelming odds. The battle with the Juggernaut would reshape the galactic arena forever. Earth's soldiers had shown that they were not just participants in the arena, they were contenders, capable of facing the impossible and emerging stronger. They had learned the most important lesson of all: no matter how powerful an enemy might seem, it was always possible to find a way to turn the tide. The fight against the Juggernaut had just begun, but Earth's soldiers had already shown that they were ready for whatever came next. As the battle with the Juggernaut wore on, the realization dawned that mere physical combat would not bring about victory. The soldiers of Earth were no longer fighting just for survival, but for a chance to rewrite the narrative of the galactic arena. The Juggernaut, despite its massive strength and seemingly invulnerable exterior, had a single glaring flaw: it lacked the ability to learn and adapt. It was a creature of brute force, designed to destroy, but not to evolve. In this, the soldiers of Earth saw an opening, a vulnerability they could exploit. The question was no longer whether they could defeat the Juggernaut in a direct confrontation. The real challenge was to outlast it, outthink it, and break its spirit. Earth's soldiers had faced insurmountable odds before, but the sheer scale of this challenge was unlike any they had encountered. The Juggernaut's unrelenting aggression seemed designed to test their endurance. The strategy had become clear: they needed to wear it down, to make it question its own invincibility. The soldiers didn't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They had to make every second count, every movement deliberate, and every decision strategic. The battle was no longer about overpowering the Juggernaut, it was about wearing it down until it no longer had the strength to continue. Earth's soldiers, for the first time in their military careers, had to fight a war of attrition, not just one battle. One of the key tactics that began to emerge was the use of precision strikes combined with rapid movement. Earth's soldiers were used to being outnumbered or facing technologically superior enemies, but their adaptability and intelligence had always been their greatest asset. Now, they relied on their ability to outmaneuver the Juggernaut. They avoided direct confrontations, instead harassing it with small, calculated attacks that targeted its weak points. These strikes didn't aim for a quick kill. They were designed to create small fractures, to destabilize the Juggernaut's momentum. Each attack was a calculated effort to chip away at its strength, not to break it all at once, but over time, in small increments. This approach would require immense patience, but it was the only way to shift the balance of power in their favor. Alongside this strategy, Earth's military began to integrate new technological innovations. They had always been on the cutting edge of military tech, but against the Juggernaut, they needed something more. Scientists worked tirelessly to develop specialized weapons and defensive systems that could address the Juggernaut's unique traits. Energy weapons were reconfigured to emit high-frequency pulses designed to disrupt the Juggernaut's biological systems, momentarily incapacitating it. High-powered electromagnetic fields were deployed to interfere with its neural network, slowing its movements and disorienting it. These technological advancements were not designed to kill the Juggernaut. They were designed to keep it off balance, to slow its progress long enough for Earth's soldiers to regroup and adapt their strategies. In addition to these technological innovations, the soldiers began to exploit the psychological warfare aspects of the battle. The Juggernaut, in its mindless rage, was a force of nature, unstoppable in its pursuit of destruction. But it lacked the ability to think beyond its immediate impulse. Earth's soldiers used this to their advantage. They spread misinformation, creating false signals that led the Juggernaut into traps. They manipulated its actions, baiting it into situations where it was forced to exert itself in ways that drained its energy and limited its options. The Juggernaut's mindless aggression made it predictable, and the soldiers used this predictability to make the creature second-guess its every move. Even though the Juggernaut was an unstoppable force in the traditional sense, it had limitations. It was not as versatile as Earth's soldiers, who had the ability to adapt on the fly. The very predictability that had once been its greatest strength became its downfall. Earth's soldiers understood this better than anyone. They had learned over the course of their careers to turn the tables on even the most powerful of adversaries by making them fight outside their comfort zone. The Juggernaut's overwhelming strength became a liability when faced with an enemy that was willing to change the rules of combat. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Juggernaut's initial aura of invincibility was beginning to crack. The first signs of vulnerability appeared when the creature began to slow. The relentless pursuit, the non-stop aggression, it was starting to take its toll. It wasn't that the Juggernaut had been defeated, it was simply running out of steam. The constant barrage of smaller strikes, combined with the psychological and technological pressure, was wearing it down. The soldiers had reached a crucial point. It was no longer about forcing a direct confrontation. It was about pushing the Juggernaut into a corner, forcing it to fight on Earth's terms. This would be the final stage of the battle, a war of attrition that would test the Juggernaut's limits and force it to break. This approach was not without its risks. The longer the battle lasted, the more difficult it became to maintain the pressure. Earth's soldiers were resilient, but they were not invincible. They had to balance their offensive strategies with defensive maneuvers to ensure they could continue to outlast the Juggernaut. They could not afford to make mistakes. They couldn't afford to lose focus. Every misstep could be catastrophic, as the Juggernaut was still a formidable adversary, and it only needed one opening to regain the upper hand. The soldiers had learned this the hard way, but they were determined not to make the same mistake twice. As the Juggernaut's movements began to slow further, the soldiers realized that they had pushed it to the edge. It was no longer the unstoppable force it had once been. It had been forced to engage on Earth's terms, and in doing so, it had been stripped of its greatest advantage, its unyielding power. Earth's soldiers were now in a position to strike the final blow, but they knew better than to rush. This was not a moment for hasty decisions. The Juggernaut's resistance was weakening, and the soldiers, using their well-honed skills and innovative technology, prepared to deliver the final, decisive blow. The Galactic arena had witnessed many great battles, but none like this. The fight against the Juggernaut had shown the galaxy that even the most invincible forces could be broken through perseverance, strategy, and an unrelenting will to survive. The victory was not just a triumph of strength, it was a testament to the ingenuity and adaptability of Earth's soldiers. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. They had proven that, no matter the odds, no matter the strength of the opponent, the will to adapt, evolve, and overcome could never be underestimated. The battle with the Juggernaut had forever changed the dynamics of the galactic arena. Earth had proven that it was not just a participant, it was a contender. And in the face of overwhelming odds, it had shown that true strength lay not in the size of the enemy, but in the ability to rise, adapt, and ultimately conquer.